The main obstacle to peace is neither Moscow nor Washington. It is Volodymyr Zelensky himself. In this video, we will demonstrate why ending this war is utterly against the personal and political interests of the Ukrainian president. By tracing the arc of his presidency and relying on established facts, we will expose the true motivation behind his steadfast refusal to negotiate. A calculated strategy of fighting to the last Ukrainian soldier while deliberately avoiding any diplomatic solution. On November 18, 2024, a Gallup report sent a clear signal. Half of Ukrainians want war to end quickly through negotiations. 52% of citizens favored a swift peace. Only 38% supported fighting on. A year has passed. While we lack new data, it's logical to assume the hunger for peace has only grown. And who stands ready to talk? The Kremlin. Dmitry Peskov has repeatedly stated Russia's openness to negotiations, placing the blame for the deadlock squarely on Kyiv. So Russia is ready. But here is the real shock. Even the President of the United States issued what amounted to an ultimatum. As the Financial Times revealed on October 19th, Donald Trump warned Zelensky to accept Russia's terms or face destruction. This creates an undeniable paradox. Ultimatums from both Moscow and Washington. Clear, poll-backed readiness for peace from his own people. Yet Zelensky rejects it all. The data is staggering. Sociologist Yevhen Golovaka's figures speak louder than any political speech. Willingness to accept Russia's terms has quadrupled since 2022. Meanwhile, the number of Ukrainians planning to return home has collapsed. People aren't just tired, they are losing faith in the very future Zelensky is offering. So, the peace process is dead, and it was killed by one man. On one side, Trump, Putin, and the Ukrainian people. On the other, President Zelensky, alone, fiercely rejecting any dialogue, pinning his hopes on impossible EU conditions that he knows will block any chance for peace. But why? Why does a leader, who swore to protect his people, choose war when his nation wants peace? Why reject a deal when every single day hundreds more die? Are a few territories really worth this endless sacrifice? Or is the answer simpler, more cynical? Perhaps he is terrified. Terrified that peace will bring a day of reckoning. A day when he will have to answer to his people for everything he has done to this unfortunate nation. What transformed a popular president into a leader blamed for blackouts, senseless losses, and a nation in lockdown? What is he truly afraid of? The answer lies ahead in this investigation. Mr. Zelensky rose to power in Ukraine by capitalizing on the failures of his predecessor, Petro Poroshenko. Poroshenko's presidency was marred by corruption, cronyism, and a stalled conflict in the southeast. His ambiguous stance alienated Russian-speaking Ukrainians, and his attacks on the traditional Orthodox Church only deepened public disillusionment. He left office deeply unpopular. Into this void stepped a new face, a young, 40-year-old, energetic, and wildly popular actor, Volodymyr Zelensky. His image was pre-built. From 2015 to 2019, audiences in Ukraine and Russia watched Servant of the People, a show where Zelensky played a humble history teacher who accidentally becomes president. The show's slogan, "The story of the next president," now sounded prophetic. People didn't see an actor, they saw his character, an honest man fighting for justice. And his ideas resonated. He was a vocal advocate for immediate peace in Donbass. In an interview with host Gordon, he declared, and I quote, "Let's think. What are the options? Going to war? I'm completely against it. I'm a liberal. For me, it's all about human life. Our goal is to save people. We will have to talk, whether we want to or not, even if we have to force ourselves. I'm ready to make a deal with the devil himself if it means not a single person dies." That was the promise. A peacemaker, an anti-corruption crusader with zero tolerance, a champion of the rule of law. He even campaigned in Russian, calling it his native language and defending everyone's right to speak freely. He was the antithesis of Poroshenko. The result? A landslide. Over 30% in the first round, double Poroshenko's score, and a crushing victory with over 70% in the runoff. But what did Ukrainians truly get? Within months, the official language switched to Ukrainian. Peace initiatives in the southeast were shelved. His inner circle was immediately engulfed in corruption scandals. To protect his allies, he began dismantling key anti-corruption reforms, even those Poroshenko had launched under Western pressure, a policy he continues to this day. I won't list every broken promise or detail his pre-war personal enrichment. The data is there. Just search for Zelensky offshore accounts, Zelensky's lavish construction, or Zelensky servant of the oligarchs. The true measure of his failure is one number, his pre-war approval rating, a mere 23%. He had plummeted from 70 to 20. He was a political corpse. And then, in a cruel twist of fate, the Russian invasion began, and it became his salvation. Within days, his approval rating skyrocketed to over 80%. By the winter of 2023, the mobilization situation in Ukraine had fundamentally changed. While it had previously proceeded in a relatively planned manner, the heavy defeat at Bakhmut changed everything. Ukrainian armed forces losses became too great, and the flow of volunteers dried up. Citizens saw that the victorious march, similar to the successes of 2022, was over. The enormous number of death notices and growing cemeteries led to society becoming far less willing to replenish the army's ranks. It was in the first days of December 2023 that the first cases of forced mobilization began to be recorded en masse in Ukraine. At first, this caused sharp rejection. People tried to appeal these actions, wrote statements. Even deputies and officials spoke out in support of citizens, claiming such conscription could not be legal. But as time passed, it became clear to many in Ukrainian society. If the authorities are grabbing people off the streets, then their declarations of victory do not match reality. A terrible dissonance emerged. While screens broadcast successes, men were being forcibly loaded into trucks at the same time. The result was not long in coming. The increase in the number of those willing to agree to unconditional capitulation is partly linked precisely to the fear of being captured and sent to the front. Millions of men became voluntary recluses. Some people do not leave their homes for a year and a half or two. They are afraid that a trip to buy bread could become a one-way ticket to the front lines, from which few return. The situation for the Ukrainian armed forces is worsened by another fact. A huge number of servicemen are fleeing the Ukrainian army itself. People who have experienced war and lost comrades simply abandon their weapons and leave the armed forces. According to one high-ranking officer, in October alone, over 21,000 people deserted from the army. It's not just new recruits who are fleeing. Experienced fighters are also leaving. They see who is being sent to reinforce them. Demoralized people grabbed off the streets. Thus, a monstrous paradox was born. On the one hand, forced mobilization allows for the recruitment of up to 30,000 people a month. On the other hand, the army loses over 20,000 people to desertion in the same period. Mobilization no longer strengthens the army. It only fuels the wheel of social discontent and human despair. This is a vicious cycle, the price of which is thousands of broken lives. And this is Zelensky's fundamental mistake in staffing the armed forces. It is one of the main reasons why Ukrainians are increasingly speaking negatively about their president. If the war ends, all these people forcibly mobilized and having endured the hell of the front will inevitably ask the question, what were they grabbed and sent to the slaughter for? And it is Vladimir Zelensky who will have to answer for this before his people. November 10th, 2025. A political earthquake shakes Ukraine. Agents from the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, NABU, are raiding the home of Volodymyr Zelensky's close friend and business partner, Timur Midas. But here's the first red flag. Midas himself, as if tipped off, fled Ukraine just hours before the raid. Sources say he crossed into Poland. Within hours, NABU publishes their evidence online. Photos of the haul, 44 million hryvnias in cash, seized from his home. Then, the detectives drop the bombshell, the first batch of the Mindik tapes, and the real shock begins. The tapes reveal a monstrous detail. Mindik, co-owner of Kvartal 95 and head of Fairpoint, a company making Ukrainian cruise missiles and drones, is accused of embezzling 40 billion hryvnias in state funds. Let me repeat that, 40 billion. That's nearly $1 billion. But one conversation is especially chilling. Two men using the codenames Tenor and Rocket are heard discussing a problem. They plan to keep building these damned defensive structures. The figures are insane. Do we do more, or are we done? We won't build any more defenses? Rocket: I'd wait. To be honest, it's a waste of money. Pointless spending. NABU says they were discussing a 4 billion hryvnia project to protect nuclear power plant substations. The lead investigator explained. The perpetrators complained that from a previous 3 billion contract, they had, quote, only received 90. It's unclear if they meant 90 million or 90,000. This isn't just a feast during the plague. This is cannibalism, devouring the state from within. People from the president's inner circle didn't just steal. Their decisions pushed millions to the brink. After Ukrainian strikes on Russia, massive retaliation hit the energy grid. And it was their choice not to build defenses that led to the catastrophe. The dominoes are falling. The justice minister has resigned. The energy minister's offices were searched. The Mindic tapes keep rolling, and the wave of arrests is just beginning. When Ukrainians saw this, social media exploded. They are demanding answers from Zelensky. How could his friends rob the country blind, leaving people in the cold and dark? Insider Telegram channels report his approval rating has cratered to 7 to 10%. While unconfirmed, one thing is clear. His support has plunged below his pre-war low of 23%. And the most telling sign of all? As of November 12th, when this video was edited, Volodymyr Zelensky remains silent. He has not found the courage to face his people, or to say what he will do next. So, what are we left with? After setting all this in motion, Zelensky has only two paths to avoid the consequences. Either cling to power through a rigged election, or flee before the ink is dry on a peace treaty. Ukrainian society has too many grievances. The dictatorship of Zelensky and his clique is a stark example of what happens when a society lacks the tools to hold its leaders accountable. He has turned Ukraine into a vast, closed state where everyone must live for the war and for his right to do as he pleases. His inner circle follows suit, systematically plundering the people. In essence, not just Zelensky, but his entire entourage must face investigation and stand trial after the war. He knows he can only win by breaking the law. His only other option is a victory so grand it justifies all the losses and a restoration of the 1,991 borders, including Crimea. Is that even possible? I cannot say, but I know this for sure. Ukrainians are tired of fighting. They are ready to risk their lives to flee to the EU, ready to hide for years, ready to inflict severe injuries on themselves, but they are not ready to die for Zelensky and his clique. And most importantly, Zelensky himself knows this. He lives in terror of the day he will finally have to answer for his crimes.